Jabari Okello grew up in Kisumu believing one thing with his whole heart: as long as his older brother Mosi was around, nothing bad could really touch him. Mosi was more than a brother. He was a shield. When kids bullied Jabari at school, Mosi stood in front of him. When their father died early, Mosi became the man of the house overnight. Jabari used to watch him and think, if I become half the man my brother is, I'll be okay. Their mother was the glue that held them together. Every evening, the three of them would sit outside their small house, sharing food and stories. Even when money was tight, there was laughter. Jabari carried those moments with him into adulthood. By his early 30s, he had a steady job, some savings, and big dreams. And every dream included Mosi. Then their mother passed away. The funeral changed everything. The house felt empty. The laughter was gone. Mosi became quiet, distant, but Jabari didn't question it. Grief does strange things, he told himself. He trusted his brother completely. In the weeks after, Jabari leaned on Mosi more than ever. They talked late into the night about the future, starting a business together, buying land, building something their mother would be proud of. Jabari shared his job plans, his savings details, even his fears. Mosi listened, nodded, and said all the right words. "You're not alone," Mosi told him. "We'll do this together." Jabari believed him. Why wouldn't he? He was his brother, his protector, his family. That day, Jabari had no idea that the man he trusted most would become the biggest enemy of his life. The accident happened on an ordinary morning in the Nairobi industrial zone. Jabari had gone to work like every other day, thinking about bills, plans, and the future he was building step by step. One moment he was crossing the yard, the next there was a loud crash, shouting, and pain tearing through his body. When he opened his eyes, he was in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines, strangers, and the smell of medicine. His body felt heavy. His legs wouldn't move. His whole life had changed in a second. The hospital bills started piling up fast. Every day someone came with new papers to sign, new numbers to pay. Jabari's savings disappeared within weeks. Then the call came from his job. They couldn't keep his position open. He was let go. Just like that, his income, his stability, his future plans were gone. Lying on that bed, staring at the ceiling, Jabari felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Mosi came every day. He sat beside the bed, held his hand, and spoke with confidence. "I'm here, brother. Don't worry. I've got you," he said. "Main hoon na." Jabari believed him. How could he not? Soon the family started depending on Jabari's name, his property, his past stability. Relatives came with worries, requests, needs. Jabari couldn't walk, couldn't work, couldn't think straight, but he still felt responsible for everyone. Mosi became the one managing things, paying small bills, talking to people, making decisions. One day, Mosi spoke calmly, like it was nothing serious. "Just give me the property papers for now," he said. "Only temporary, so I can handle things properly while you recover." Jabari hesitated for a second, just 1 second. Then he looked at his brother's face. The same face that had protected him since childhood. The same voice that had always said, "I've got you." So he handed over the papers. Not with fear, not with doubt, with trust. He told himself it was family. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself his brother would never hurt him. Lying in that hospital bed, weak, broken, and grateful for help, Jabari felt safe because Mosi was in charge. But deep down, without knowing why, his heart felt heavy. Because that day, Jabari trusted his brother. And that became the biggest mistake of his life. When Jabari finally left the hospital, his body was still weak, but his heart was full of hope. Every painful step he took on the long journey back to Kisumu felt like a victory. He kept telling himself that once he reached home, everything would slowly make sense again. His brother would be there. His house would be there. His life would start again. The bus dropped him a few streets away. Jabari walked slowly, leaning on a stick, carrying a small bag with all that was left of his belongings. As the familiar house came into view, his heart beat faster. This was the place where his mother laughed, where they ate together, where he believed he was safe. But something felt wrong. The gate looked different. The lock was not the same one he remembered. Jabari tried the key he had carried for years. It didn't fit. He tried again, his hands shaking. Still nothing. That's when panic crawled into his chest. He knocked on the door, softly at first, then harder. The door opened, and Mosi stood there. For a moment, Jabari smiled in relief. "I'm home," he said quietly. Mosi didn't smile back. Instead, he stepped outside and closed the door behind him, like Jabari was a stranger. His voice was cold, flat. "You shouldn't have come without calling," he said. Jabari didn't understand. "What do you mean? This is my house." Mosi laughed, but there was no warmth in it. He pulled out papers from a folder and waved them in Jabari's face. "Not anymore. Legally, it's mine." The words hit harder than the accident ever did. Jabari felt the neighbors' eyes on him. Curtains moved. People stopped walking. The whole street was listening. Jabari's voice trembled. "Mosi, you said it was temporary." Mosi stepped closer and lowered his voice, sharp like a knife. "Look at you," he said. "You can't work. You can't provide. Tu abjishi kam kanahi." Jabari felt his chest tighten. This was the same brother who once carried him on his shoulders. The same man who promised to protect him. Now he was being thrown out of his own home like he meant nothing. "Leave," Mosi said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Before I call the police." Jabari stood there, broken, humiliated, holding his bag, surrounded by people who knew his story but said nothing. Slowly he turned away. Each step felt heavier than the last. That day, Jabari didn't just lose his house. He lost his trust. He lost his family. And he lost the man he thought his brother was. By the time Jabari reached the bus station in Nakuru, night had already fallen. The place was loud, crowded, and cold, yet he felt completely invisible. He stood there with a small bag in his hand, the same bag he had carried out of his own house. Everything he owned was inside it. When he checked his pockets, there was nothing. No money. Not even enough for a cup of tea. 0. That number kept echoing in his head. Hunger hit him slowly, then all at once. His stomach burned, and his legs ached from standing too long. The cold air cut through his thin jacket. People passed by, laughing, arguing, rushing somewhere. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with pity, and a few with suspicion. Jabari lowered his eyes. For the first time in his life, he felt ashamed just for existing. He sat on a bench and stared at the ground. Doubt crept into his mind, quiet but heavy. What if this is it? He thought. What if I never recover? What if Mosi was right? What if I really am useless now? The questions hurt more than his injuries. Tears filled his eyes, but he swallowed them. Crying wouldn't change anything. Hours passed. His body grew weaker. That's when he smelled it, hot tea and fresh mandatsi. Near the corner of the station, a small chai stall glowed under a single bulb. A middle-aged woman stood there, pouring tea with slow, careful movements. She noticed Jabari watching from a distance. "You look tired, son," she said gently. "Have some tea." Jabari shook his head. "I have no money." She didn't argue. She poured a cup anyway and placed it in his hands. "Drink," she said. "We are still human." The warmth of the cup surprised him. The first sip burned his tongue, but it also reached something deeper. His chest tightened. Someone still saw him. Someone still cared. He thanked her quietly, his voice shaking. As he sat there, warming his hands, Jabari felt something shift inside him. No one was coming to save him. No brother. No family. No promises. But he was still alive, still breathing, still thinking. And in that moment, surrounded by noise, hunger, and cold, Jabari understood one simple truth. If he wanted to survive, he would have to trust himself. For the first time since everything fell apart, that thought gave him strength. Eldoret became Jabari's world when he had nowhere else to go. It wasn't a dream city, and it wasn't kind, but it gave him work. Every morning before sunrise, he stood with other men by the roadside, waiting for someone to pick them for daily wage jobs. Some days he was chosen. Some days he wasn't. On the days he was, he thanked God quietly. On the days he wasn't, he learned how to wait without breaking. Most of the work was at construction sites. carrying heavy bags of cement, mixing sand and stones, climbing scaffolding with a body that was still healing. His old injuries often reminded him of the accident. Some nights he went to sleep with swollen hands and a back that felt like it was on fire. A few times he got hurt again, cuts, falls, bruises. He never complained. He couldn't afford to. Jabari ate simply. Sometimes it was one meal a day. Sometimes just tea and bread. He rented a tiny room with cracked walls and a leaking roof. When it rained, he moved his mattress to the corner and waited for the storm to pass. At night, when the city finally went quiet, loneliness hit him the hardest. There were no calls from family, no messages, no one asking if he was alive, and slowly he stopped expecting them. But those nights weren't wasted. When others slept, Jabari studied. He borrowed old books. He watched free lessons on a secondhand phone. He learned new skills one slow step at a time. His eyes burned from staring at the screen, but his mind stayed awake. He told himself that his body might be tired, but his future didn't have to be. This was his silent phase. No announcements, no support, no applause. Just discipline, pain, and patience. Every day he grew a little stronger, not in muscle but in belief. He learned how to stand alone without becoming bitter. He learned how to fall and still get up the next morning. Sometimes memories of his mother came back, especially on the hardest days. He imagined her watching him, quietly proud. That thought kept him going when nothing else did. Jabari fell many times in Eldoret, physically, emotionally, financially. But he didn't break. He had fallen, but he was not broken. One afternoon in Eldoret, when Jabari's body was tired but his mind was restless, he walked past a small local tech hub. It wasn't fancy, just a modest building with faded paint and a sign that promised learning and opportunity. Normally he would have kept walking. Places like that felt like they were meant for other people. Not for a man with worn shoes and construction dust on his hands. But something inside him said, go in. Inside, a few young people sat with laptops, focused and quiet. Jabari stood near the door, unsure, until a trainer noticed him and asked what he was looking for. Jabari spoke honestly. He talked about the nights he spent learning on his phone, the skills he was teaching himself, and how badly he needed a chance. The trainer didn't laugh. He listened. That day, Jabari was allowed to stay. At first, it was uncomfortable. His hands were rough, his confidence low, and his English not perfect. But he learned fast. He stayed late. He asked questions. When others left, he practiced. The hunger inside him pushed him harder than any teacher could. Then one morning, the trainer called his name. A small client needs help, he said. You can try. Jabari's heart raced. His first real chance. He worked carefully, checking everything twice. When the job was done, the client smiled and said, "Good work." A few hours later, Jabari received his first payment. It wasn't a lot, but when he saw the money on his phone, his hands started shaking. This money came from his mind, from his effort, from his growth. For the first time in years, someone looked at him with respect. Word spread slowly. One client became two. Two became more. People started calling him by his name, not by his problems. They asked for his opinion. They trusted him with work. And with every small success, Jabari felt his self-worth returning. He stood taller. He spoke clearer. He believed again. Late one evening as he walked home, Jabari smiled to himself. He thought of Mosi, of the words that had crushed him, of the day he was thrown out like nothing. Mosi thought he was weak, but Mosi had underestimated one thing, Jabari's hunger. Because hunger, when mixed with patience and pain, can change everything. Nairobi felt different when Jabari arrived this time. Years ago, it had taken everything from him. Now, he came back with quiet confidence and a clear purpose. What started as small freelance work in Eldoret had grown into a real business. He had clients, systems, and a name people trusted. He rented a small office, then a bigger one. Slowly, the struggle days began to fade into memory. People started noticing him. A local blog wrote about his journey, from construction sites to tech solutions. Then a radio interview followed. Jabari sat behind the microphone, nervous but honest, speaking in simple words about failure, hunger, and starting again. Listeners connected with his story. Messages poured in from strangers who said, "If you can do it, maybe I can too." Investors came next. They didn't just see his skills, they saw his discipline. They saw a man who had built everything the hard way. Meetings that once would have scared him now felt normal. He asked questions. He negotiated. He chose carefully. Jabari wasn't chasing fast money anymore. He was building something that would last. Late nights in Nairobi often brought memories of his mother. He remembered her voice telling him to stand straight, to be honest, to never beg for respect. Sometimes after a long day, he would sit alone and talk to her in his heart. "I didn't give up," he would whisper. "I hope you're proud." With success came temptation, shortcuts, ego, revenge. Jabari avoided them all. He promised himself something important. "I will write my own story. Not the one people expected. Not the one pain tried to force on him. His own." The business kept growing. His name appeared in meetings, in emails, in conversations he wasn't even part of. People spoke about Jabari Okello with respect, some with admiration, some with curiosity. And then, one ordinary day, as Jabari signed a contract in his Nairobi office, he paused and smiled, because somewhere, in a place he once called home, his name had finally reached his brother's ears. And Mosi was listening. The day Mosi walked into Jabari's office, the city outside seemed quieter than usual. Jabari was at his desk, reviewing a contract with investors, when a familiar voice called his name. He looked up and froze. It was Mosi, the same brother who once betrayed him, now dressed in a sharp suit that couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. But this time, the fear wasn't on Jabari's side. Mosi stepped forward, hands slightly shaking. "Jabari, I need your help," he said, trying to sound calm. "Everything's gone. My business, it failed. I don't know what to do." Jabari leaned back, his eyes steady. He didn't feel the old anger boiling up. He didn't feel the urge to yell or run. He just looked at the man who had once been his protector and then his enemy. There was no rush, no weakness. The power had shifted, and Jabari knew it. I'm sorry, Jabari," Mosi added quickly, almost too quickly. "I shouldn't have done what I did. I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" Jabari's lips curved into a small, controlled smile. Inside, he felt a surge of calm. He had waited years for this moment, and it had finally come. He didn't need words from Mosi. He didn't need apologies or excuses. The tables had turned. "Sit down," Jabari said slowly, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "Tell me what you want." Mosi swallowed hard. I need your guidance. Just a chance to fix things." Jabari didn't answer immediately. He leaned back, letting the silence stretch. In that silence, Mosi felt the weight of every betrayal, every lie, every unfair moment he had caused. And for the first time, he understood what it felt like to be powerless in front of the brother he had tried to destroy. Jabari's voice finally cut through the quiet. "You underestimated me once, Mosi. You thought I was weak. You thought my hunger didn't matter. But look at me now." He gestured around the sleek office, the contracts, the investors waiting outside, and the team that respected him. Everything Mosi had tried to take from him was now stronger than ever. Mosi nodded, swallowing his pride. He knew the truth. He knew the game had changed. Jabari leaned forward slightly, calm and unshaken, and said softly, almost like a whisper but filled with steel, "This time, the decision is mine." The day of the confrontation felt heavier than any day Jabari had experienced. The community hall in Kisumu was buzzing with people, neighbors, relatives, friends, and strangers who had followed the story. The air smelled of tension, of whispers and curiosity. Everyone wanted to see the brother who had betrayed his own family, and the man who had risen from nothing to confront him. Jabari sat calmly at the front, papers neatly stacked, his lawyer beside him. Across the hall, Mosi tried to carry his usual arrogance, but it felt smaller here. The room seemed too full for lies, too loud for excuses. The judge began, and the legal process unfolded. One by one, the documents were presented. Property papers, bank statements, Contracts Mosi had forged. Every line, every signature, every manipulation was revealed in front of the crowd. Faces in the hall grew tense. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Mosi shifted uncomfortably, realizing the extent of what was exposed. For the first time, his smooth words and confident demeanor faltered. His face twitched as his true thoughts came out. Frustration, greed, and the cold calculation that had driven him to betray Jabari in the first place. I thought I was helping, he stammered, but nobody believed him. Jabari's heart beat steadily, but his face remained calm. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He didn't gloat. He let the evidence do the talking. He let the community, the law, and the truth speak louder than any anger or revenge could. His silence was deliberate. His composure was power. Witness after witness confirmed the timeline, the promises, the betrayal. Even the neighbors who had quietly observed everything came forward. Mosi's credibility crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. Every attempt to twist the story back failed. The room, once alive with speculation, now held a respectful silence. When the judge finally spoke, Jabari listened without flinching. The verdict was clear. Everything that Mosi had unlawfully claimed was returned to Jabari. His home, his rights, his dignity. Public justice had been served, but it felt deeper than the legal win. It was a reclaiming of his identity, his self-respect, and his story. Mosi left the hall defeated, humiliated, powerless. People looked at Jabari differently now, not just as the brother who was wronged, but as the man who had endured, who had grown stronger, and who had waited patiently for the truth to rise. Jabari stood quietly, letting the silence of the room fill him with strength. He didn't need to yell to show anger, or to humiliate his brother. His calm had spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. In that moment, Jabari realized something profound. Badla, revenge, or anger wouldn't define him. What mattered was control, integrity, and quiet strength. Revenge was not my victory. My silence was my victory. The community center in Kisumu was alive with energy. Children and teenagers filled the room, notebooks in hand, eyes wide with curiosity. Jabari stood at the front, smiling warmly, feeling the weight of the years he had endured and the strength he had earned. This was his moment, not to boast but to give back. He spoke about dreams, about resilience, about the power of never giving up. He told them stories of struggle, of falling and rising, of nights spent learning when the world seemed to have turned its back. The young ones listened, captivated, as if every word was a spark lighting a fire inside them. This wasn't just a speech. It was a lesson, a mission. Jabari had started a free training program in his mother's name, a foundation that would help youth learn skills, build confidence, and find opportunities they might never have imagined. Every computer, every book, every instructor was a bridge for someone who once might have felt invisible. As he moved among the students, helping them with practical exercises, he felt a calm pride. He remembered the women who gave him chai when he had nothing, the nights he spent studying alone, the pain and hunger that once seemed endless. Those memories fueled him, shaping not just the man he had become, but the mentor he was now. Outside the hall, Mosi stood quietly at a distance. He watched the boy who had once been powerless become a man who inspired a generation. There was no confrontation, no anger, no words exchanged. Just observation. And in that quiet watching, Mosi understood. He had underestimated Jabari in every way. Jabari noticed him briefly but didn't break his focus. He was beyond the past. His eyes were on the future, on the young faces in front of him, on the impact he could make. Every story he told, every lesson he shared, carried the strength of someone who had fallen, fought, and risen. And in that moment, as the students clapped and laughed and dreamed bigger than they ever had, Jabari felt the truth fully. Those who tried to break me learned how to live by my example.